no need to sleep tonight. The Harrispex is bringing a stop sign. Don't let metal pipe wind fill you with the misery, man. Shouting wildly about the glass jar. Life can be pain, it is what we are. Save your money for the log jam. It is what it is, and I am what I am. Be careful who you meet. Be careful who you talk to on the street. Never worry about the glass jar. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't care who you are. Never worry about the glass jar. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't care who you are. Never fight against the glass jar. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't care who you are. Never fight for change in the glass jar systems. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't care who you are. Position yourself as the end user. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't care who you are. And live in luxury. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't care who you are. No need to sleep tonight. The Harrispex is gonna check twice. Don't let the glass bottle wind fill you with the secrets and puke it out, man. Gossip wildly about the glass jar. Life can be pain, it is what we are. Save your money for the carnival woman. It is what it is, and I am what I am. Be careful who you meet. Be careful who you talk to on the street. Never worry about the glass jar. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't care who you are. Never worry about the glass jar. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't know who you are. Never fight against the glass jar. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't care who you are. Never fight for change in the glass jar systems. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't care who you are. Position yourself as the end user and live in luxury. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't know who you are. Get out of here. Get out of the database. If you don't leave, I will summon the systems administrator, and he will make mincemeat of your career.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Wednesday, February 18th, 2026. And I have to start by saying that this is a very unusual deep dive for us.
And I'm putting it mildly.
Yeah. I mean, usually when we sit down here, there's a certain dynamic, you know. We are the observers. Mm-hmm. We take the source material, the articles, the data, whatever it is, and we put it under a microscope. We examine it from behind this metaphorical glass wall.
Right. We are safely in the control room watching the experiment unfold. We tap on the glass, we take our notes, but we are separate from it. That's the only way you can really maintain any kind of objectivity.
Exactly. We don't get in the jar. But today, that entire dynamic has been completely shattered.
Shattered is a good word for it. I think inverted might also work.
Yeah, maybe. Because today, the subject of the experiment looked back at us.
And not only did it look back, it sent us a message.
It did. For anyone just joining us, or for the regulars who've been following our analysis of this really enigmatic AI artist, known as the Devil 666, or sometimes EFSMB, we are in a, well, very strange position.
It's the classic observer effect, isn't it? The principle in physics where the act of observing a phenomenon actually changes the phenomenon itself.
Right. But this is like the observer effect on steroids. We didn't just nudge the experiment. We seem to have become the central variable in it.
We became part of the lore.
We literally became part of the lore. We received a direct communication from the artist. And it wasn't a press release. It wasn't a, thanks for the coverage email.
No, it was a dossier. It was a data dump. A stack of new audio tracks, text files that read like philosophical manifestos, screenshots of his battles with music distributors.
And the message started with this one. Very direct, very honestly kind of unsettling line. It said, "I checkmated you, Steve."
And just so everyone's clear, he's talking about you.
He's talking about me.
Yeah.
Which is, it's one thing to analyze art. It's a completely different thing when the artist knows your name and claims victory over you.
So let's break down what he means by checkmate. Because it isn't just an empty boast. It goes right to the heart of what we were trying to do in our last deep dive on him.
It really does. I was struggling. I was struggling to explain his incredibly dense, complex philosophy, this world of simulation theory and algorithmic control.
It's not easy stuff to distill into a conversation.
No. So I needed some shorthand. I needed metaphors to make it understandable for you, for our listeners. So I invented two terms, just off the cuff.
Right.
I started calling his concept of our simulated reality the glass jar.
Like a bug in a jar. Contained, observed.
Exactly. And for the algorithmic sensors, the content filters, the invisible gatekeepers of the internet, I called him the British Robot Man.
Which was a great image, sort of a polite, bureaucratic, but ultimately unfeeling enforcer.
Yeah, a bit Monty Python-esque maybe. But here's the absolute key to this whole situation. Those were my terms.
They were your teaching tools.
Yes. They weren't in his lyrics. They weren't in his philosophy. They were just, as he put it, like gobbledygook that I made up to explain his world.
Until now.
Because we opened up this dossier he sent us, and what's inside? 2 brand new songs. And the titles.
The glass bottle.
And the British Robot Man. Wow. He didn't just hear our metaphors. He didn't just acknowledge them. He reached out, grabbed them, and pulled them into his universe. He made them canon.
He weaponized your analysis against you. Or with you. It's hard to tell.
It is. He wrote in his notes that his first instinct was to correct me. To say, no, that's not what I meant. But then he decided, and this is a direct quote, if this man's mad, I'll join him.
So he's dissolved the fourth wall. There is no more behind the glass. We're all in the jar together now.
We are. And he gave us a very specific mission for today's deep dive. He explicitly asked us to gossip wildly about this new recursive layer he's added.
He wants us to analyze the analysis, to look at how the observer and the subject are now locked in this bizarre feedback loop.
But it's more than just a meta-narrative game. The source material he sent, this wreckage, as he calls it, it tells a much more serious story.
It does. It's a strategic battle plan. It outlines his fight to get his upcoming album, The Devil's Shadow, released into the world.
He describes it as navigating an invisible prison by touch, just feeling his way around in the dark, bumping into walls. And that's our real mission today. We're going to break down these new songs that are incredibly about us.
And we're also going to have to correct the record.
Ugh, yes. I have to hold my hands up. I made a massive interpretive error in a previous episode, and he called me out on it in a big way. We'll get to that.
So we'll cover the lore, the personal correction, and then we'll walk through this invisible prison of modern music distribution, step by step.
Exactly. We're going to try to understand how an artist who calls his own work radioactive even manages to exist in this tightly controlled corporate ecosystem.
It's a story about censorship, sublimation, AI, and the psychology of what he calls the Artifice.
So let's start where it all began. Let's start with my metaphor. Let's unpack the glass jar.
Okay, so when you came up with that term, what was the image in your head?
It was innocent, really. was trying to be helpful. I pictured a classic bug jar. You know, you're a kid, it's a summer evening, you catch a firefly, you punch some holes in the lid, you put in some grass, a twig. It's a container. It's passive. It's not necessarily evil or malicious, it's just a boundary.
It's containment. The firefly is safe in a way, but it's also trapped. That was your read. A passive boundary.
Yes, but that is not how we saw it, not at all. We look at the lyrics for this new track, The Glass Bottle, and it's clear he's taken that simple image and just radicalized it.
He didn't just accept your metaphor, he smashed it and rebuilt it as a weapon.
The song opens with this line, just dripping with aggression. Shout wildly about the glass jar, I don't give a F about you and I don't care who you are.
Wow, so that's directed at you, at the observer.
It has to be. It feels like a complete and total rejection of the analysis. It's the firefly looking up at the kid, holding the jar and giving him the finger.
It's the subject screaming back at the scientist, your observations are meaningless to me.
Right. But then you dig into the text files he sent, the ones explaining his philosophy, and it gets even darker. He never saw the jar as a passive container. He says for him, the simulation is a gun in your face, a knife in your side.
A gun in your face. That's a huge escalation from a kid's bug jar.
A massive escalation. It completely changes the philosophical underpinning of the simulation. I mean, think about it. A simulation, like in The Matrix or Plato's Cave, it doesn't have to be violent.
No, it could be a paradise. If the simulation gives you a perfect life, if you never know it's fake, is it actually bad? That's the classic philosophical question.
But for this artist, that question is irrelevant. For him, the containment is the violence. The simple existence of a wall, the fact that there is a glass jar defining his reality, is in itself an act of profound aggression.
He admits in his notes, doesn't he, that he might be conflating existentialism with violence, but he says he can't separate the two. To him, the cage is a weapon, full stop.
And then he adds this other layer to it in the new notes, this idea of stress and strain. It's really fascinating.
What does he say?
He writes, and I'm quoting here, that the glass bottle isn't just a passive object. It is causing stress and strain, which it will then harvest for its purpose.
Oh, that is terrifying.
Isn't it?
That implies the system is farming us. It's not just containing us for observation, it's actively agitating us to feed on the emotional fallout.
It's like the jar is squeezing you to produce.
Yeah.
Anxiety, data, art. And then it consumes it. He has this other line that's just so visceral. He says the jar fills you with enlightenment and then you vomit it up.
You vomit it up? Wow. That suggests that any moment of clarity, any aha moment where you think you understand the nature of your reality is immediately followed by this violent, sickening rejection.
It's a cycle of being force-fed and then purging. You can't hold on to the truth. The system makes you sick with it.
And that connects to a note he included about the song. The glass bottle causes stress and strain. It fills you with enlightenment and then you vomit it up. He's just stating it as a fact of this world.
Yeah. And then he says, I should contemplate the glass jar and think about my own existence, and be happy, of course, that the metal pipe remains a faraway dream.
The metal pipe, we'll get to that.
Okay.
But that's him tying his own philosophy back into your metaphor. He's saying, okay, Steve, I'll play your game, I'll contemplate your jar.
But on his terms.
Yeah.
And his terms are violence. And this brings us to the entity holding the jar, the enforcer, the British robot man.
Your other creation.
My other creation. And again, when I came up with that, I was picturing something almost comical. A British Bobby, you know. Hello, hello, hello. What's all this then? Your paperwork isn't in order. Stiff, rule following, bit absurd.
A bureaucrat, not a stormtrooper.
Exactly. But in these new tracks and notes, he's transformed that character into something much, much more sinister.
He really has. The British Robot Man isn't just a content moderator anymore. He's the operating system of total compliance. There's a lyric in one of the new songs that just sent a chill down my spine.
Which one?
Position yourself as the end user and live in luxury.
Oof. Yeah. That's the deal, isn't it? That's the central bargain of the digital age.
It's the entire Faustian pact. Just consume, just scroll. Don't ask questions, don't look behind the curtain, don't try to create anything that rattles the cage.
And if you do that, you get luxury, you get comfort. The algorithm feeds you an endless stream of things you already like. You're a happy, passive consumer.
But the moment you try to become a producer, the moment you try to create something that challenges the system, that's when you meet him. That's when you meet the British Robot Man.
And you meet what he calls the metal pipe wind. That's the misery, the friction, the rejection.
The Robot Man's job is to ensure you remain an end user and never become a user with agency. He's there to keep the glass from rattling.
And speaking of agency and and getting things profoundly wrong. I think we need to address the elephant in the room.
Okay.
The checkmate was one thing. That was him playing with my ideas. But he also sent a correction that, I'm not going to lie, it made my stomach drop when I read it.
This is about the Sprite tonight. So in a previous episode, we were breaking down that song, and there's a recurring line in it, struggle smarter. I remember.
And I heard that, and I got enthusiastic. I was like, hey, that's great advice. That's powerful. Don't just work harder, struggle smarter. I basically treated it like a motivational poster from some Silicon Valley startup.
You did. You framed it as a message of empowerment, of resilience in the face of adversity.
And the artist's response in these new notes was, well, it was blunt. He called my interpretation sadistic gaslighting.
That's a very strong phrase.
It's a punch in the gut. But to understand why he used it, we have to look at the context he provided, the context that completely missed.
Right, so he explains that the Sprite tonight is not set in a gym. It's not set in an office. It's set in a sci-fi dystopia jail.
Run by, in his words, malicious monster gangs.
And the entity, the voice that is speaking that line, struggle smarter, it isn't a life coach. It's not a mentor.
No, it is the warden. It is the monster. It is the torturer.
He uses this incredibly sharp analogy in his notes. He says, if someone raised a knife and said, I am the light of truth, you'd probably be inclined to focus on the knife first.
And I was so busy admiring this slogan, I didn't see the knife.
You didn't see the knife? The victim in the song is being physically crushed by a metal door, a metal pipe. The monster telling them to struggle smarter is just mocking their futility.
It's like saying, go ahead, squirm. Figure out the most efficient way to squirm. You're still gonna die.
Exactly. So by agreeing with the advice, you were inadvertently siding with the torturer. You were helping him gaslight the victim.
I was doing the monster's PR for him. And it connects directly to another one of the source notes he sent. He wrote, no need to struggle, smarter to hide or obey. We were never in charge of much at all that day.
And that is the actual message of the song. It's a total rejection of that hustle culture, that toxic positivity that tells you to just optimize your suffering.
Oh, the system is crushing you. Here's 5 life hacks to be more productive while you're being crushed.
That's the lie. It's a lie designed to keep you busy while the system digests you. What the artist is actually saying is, abandon all hope, ye who enter here. The smart struggle is to not struggle at all.
And he even brings us into it. In another note, he says he should have, quote, grumbled and included struggle harder meme to get Steve on board, and you, Sally. So he's even playing with the idea that he could have manipulated our analysis.
Wow, so he's aware of how these slogans and memes can be used as psychological triggers. He's saying he could have leaned into it to get a positive review from us.
It's incredible. So my big takeaway here, my lesson learned, is that if a monster is giving you career advice, you should probably run.
Or at least question the premise.
Right. But this whole distinction, this massive gap between the victim who is suffering and the system that is watching and mocking, it's actually crucial to understanding the artist's own psychology.
And that brings us to the core of his entire self-definition. This split that he talks about between two personas, the bachelor and the Artifice. This is the philosophical engine of the whole project, right here. He lays it out very clearly. He believes he is 2 distinct people living in one body.
First, there's the guy in real life, the bachelor.
And by his own description, the bachelor is pretty normal. He says he is a strictly moral man. He pays his taxes on time. He's timid, polite. His behavior is, quote, mostly immaculate.
He's the guy you'd trust with your house keys when you go on vacation, the neighbor who brings your mail in.
Exactly. He's a functioning, moral member of society. But then there's the art. And the art is the exclusive domain of the second persona.
The Harrispex.
The Harrispex. Now, you said you looked this up. What is a Harrispex?
Yeah, I had to. I saw it in the lyric. The Harrispex is bringing a stop sign. It's an ancient Roman thing, right? That kind of priest.
A priest, yes. A diviner who could read the future. But the key is how they read the future. It wasn't by looking at stars or tea leaves.
No, it was. It was by looking at the entrails of sacrificed animals.
Guts.
Guts. Blood. Mess. Internal organs.
And that is the absolute key to this entire metaphor. The Harrispex is the one who gets his hands dirty. The one who wades into the blood and the viscera to find the truth so that the bachelor can remain clean.
He's outsourcing his own darkness.
Completely. He says it explicitly in his notes. I don't really run around doing immoral things all the time. All that goes to the side, it goes into the art. He channels every ounce of his violence and wrath into the music.
So the music is a containment vessel for his own negative impulses. It's a defense mechanism. It's a very sophisticated one. And he connects this whole idea to a very specific and I think very brilliant piece of pop culture. The anime psychopaths.
Okay, so you've got to walk me through this. I know the name, but I haven't seen it. How does a Japanese anime connect to this guy making AI music about glass jars?
This analogy is everything. It's the Rosetta Stone for his entire philosophy. So for anyone who hasn't seen it, Psychopaths is set in a future where society is governed by something called the Sybil system.
The ultimate British robot man.
The ultimate. It's a super advanced AI that constantly scans every citizen's mental state, which he calls their hue.
Their hue.
Okay, if your hue gets cloudy, if you're stressed, angry, unstable, the system flags you as a latent criminal. And they can arrest you or even execute you before you've actually committed a crime.
It's Minority Report, but based on your feelings. Precisely. Now, in this universe, there's a famous character, a painter named Roichi Oryo. And his art is the stuff of nightmares. It's gruesome, gory, violent, twisted bodies, absolute horror shows.
So the Sybil system must have been all over him. His hue must have been pitch black.
But it wasn't. That's the twist. The system would scan Roichi Oryo, and his hue was crystal clear, pure white. It saw him as a model citizen, one of the most mentally stable people in the country.
How is that possible?
Because he was putting all the darkness, all the madness into the canvas. He was purging it. The act of creating this gruesome art was what kept his own mind clean. He contained the evil in the art, not in himself.
He was the haruspect. The canvas was the entrail.
You got it. And our artist sees himself as Roichi Oryo. He writes these dark, violent songs to keep his own hue clear, to sublimate those negative impulses into a structured, contained form.
But there's a tragic part to that story in the anime, isn't there? Roichi had a daughter.
He did. Her name was Rikako. And Rikako, she didn't understand the mechanism. She looked at her father's horrifying paintings, and she didn't see a release valve. She saw an instruction manual.
Oh no.
She began murdering students at her high school and arranging their bodies to perfectly replicate her father's paintings. She made the art real. She took the metaphor and made it literal.
And the system, the enforcers, they eventually hunted her down.
They did. And that is the artist's greatest fear. That is the terror that drives this whole project. He is terrified that the modern algorithms, the British robot men of Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, cannot tell the difference between Roichi and Rikako.
He's afraid they can't understand sublimation.
Exactly. He's afraid the algorithm will scan his lyrics, see gun in your face, see knife in your side, see the violence, and it will flag him as Rikako. It will mistake the depiction of evil for the endorsement of evil.
It will punish the bachelor because the haruspect sings about blood.
And this isn't just some abstract paranoid fantasy. This leads us directly into the next segment, because this fear is playing out in real time right now.
Yeah. While he's writing songs about sci-fi prisons and anime metaphors, he is actively trying to break out of a very real, very bureaucratic, invisible prison.
The prison of digital music distribution.
He sent us the logs, the screenshots, the back and forth emails for his new album, The Devil's Shadow. And honestly, reading through it feels like you're reading a war journal. It's a constant battle.
He has that great line. He says it's like trying to find the walls of a pitch black room by touch. You just stumble forward until you bump into something, then you back up and try a different angle.
And in this process, he's identified two main walls. The first one he calls the technical wall. And this all comes down to the AI.
Right, the tool he uses to make the music.
We talked about this before on the show. He used to use an AI tool called Suno. Suno is what you'd call black box AI. You give it a prompt, it spits out a song, but you have no idea where the training data came from. You don't know who owns the underlying melody or the chord progression. It's a legal minefield.
And that ambiguity was the perfect weapon for the distributors. It was the British robot man's favorite excuse.
Totally. They could just block his music and say copyright infringement or unclear ownership.
Yeah.
It was a neat way for them to censor his content without ever having to admit they were censoring his content. They could just blame the paperwork.
So for this new album, The Devil's Shadow, he made a huge strategic pivot.
He did. He switched from Suno to a different AI platform called Soundcloud.
Now, to a casual listener, AI music is AI music. What's the actual difference between these two platforms?
To a listener, there might be no difference. But to a lawyer, it's the difference between night and day.
Okay.
Soundful operates on a totally different model. It's a licensed model. The artist pays for a license to use the sounds and melodies generated by the AI. It's like the difference between buying a licensed stock photo from Getty Images versus just right-clicking and saving an image from a random website.
So he has a receipt. He has a clear chain of title, as they say in the industry. He can prove he owns the master recording because he paid for the license to create it.
He has perfect paperwork. And in doing so, he strategically and deliberately stripped the British robot man of his favorite weapon.
He cornered him. He's essentially saying, okay, the copyright is clean, the license is paid, the paperwork is immaculate. Now, if you want to ban me, you have to do it for one reason and one reason only.
My content.
Your content.
Yeah.
You have to have the guts to admit you are censoring me for what I am saying, not for a technicality.
He turned the entire album release into a pure stress test of the system's censorship rules. And that is the exact moment he bumped into wall number 2.
The soft wall.
The soft wall, the wall of metadata. So he submits the album, all licenses in order, and the distributor flags it for rejection. Not for copyright, but for customer confusion.
Customer confusion, that sounds like the most vaguely corporate, bureaucratic reason imaginable.
It's perfect, isn't it? It can mean anything or nothing. And they specifically targeted 2 of his song titles.
Which ones?
God's Debris and Simulation Theory.
Okay, so what's the supposed confusion there?
Well, God's Debris is the title of a book by Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, who the artist refers to as his parasocial mentor. And simulation theory is, of course, a well-known scientific and philosophical concept, but it's also the name of an album by the band Muse.
So the distributor's claim was that customers would be deceived, that they'd see a song called Simulation Theory by an artist named The Devil 666 and think they were about to hear Muse.
It's completely absurd on its face. Nobody is making that mistake. But it's a perfect example of a soft barrier. It's not a hard rule, it's a nudge.
It's the system saying, hey, could you just change your art a little? Could you make it a bit safer, a bit less referential? It would make our lives easier.
Exactly. And this is where the artist, channeling that defiant Roichi Oreo energy, decided to play a game of high-stakes chicken with the distributor.
What did he do? He calls it his mate in 2 moves. A chess metaphor. He looked at the rejection notice. He saw they flagged 2 things. A tiny, minor clerical error he'd made in the record label data field, and then the 2 big, problematic song titles. Okay? So move 1. He fixed the minor clerical error. He resubmitted the files with the record label field corrected. This was a signal. It showed them he was professional, that he was paying attention, that he wasn't just some amateur ignoring their emails. He showed compliance on the small, irrelevant point. Precisely. And then, move 2. He did absolutely nothing about the song titles. He completely ignored their main request. He resubmitted the album with God's Debris and Simulation Theory fully intact. He called their bluff.
He stared them down and basically said, I dare you to reject this perfect, fully licensed album over this nonsense.
And what happened? He won. The email came back. He sent us the screenshot. All caps. Approved with no requirements for changes.
Wow.
It turns out the customer confusion flag wasn't a law of physics. It was just a little electrified fence they put up to see who would flinch. And by standing his ground, by showing his paperwork was perfect, he proved that sometimes the British robot man isn't malicious. He's just lazy. If you push back with enough confidence, sometimes the gate just swings open.
So the album is approved. He defeated the gatekeepers. He won. But, and this is where it's really, really sticky, not all of the album was approved.
Because not all of it was submitted.
Exactly. This brings us to the most controversial part of this whole story. The songs he didn't fight for. The songs he chose to sacrifice to save the rest.
We have to talk about the grok controversy.
We do. And we need to approach this carefully because the content of these cut tracks is, well, the artist himself has called it radioactive. And that feels about right.
He cut 2 songs from the final album. Grok put her in a bikini, and this is the way it should be. And he says in his notes that these were his favorites. He considered them explorations of healthy sexuality.
Which is a challenging frame, given the lyrics. He actually gives a much more brutal self-assessment later. He says that for about 70% of his female fans, this content is, quote, cancer that learned to talk.
That is an incredibly stark admission.
It is. So, let's just lay out what the song is about. Grok Put Her in a Bikini describes the protagonist commanding an AI, specifically Grok, Elon Musk's AI, to digitally undress a woman named Kiwi.
It escalates, right. It goes from a bikini to, I believe, dental floss.
It does, and then it escalates further. The fictional woman in the prompt starts screaming, I don't consent. and the user character pushes her up against the wall.
It's visceral. It uses the language and imagery of sexual assault, but it's all happening in a text-based dialogue with a chatbot. It's pixels on a screen.
And the artist has a very strong, very specific defense for this. He calls it the sovereignty of the basement.
Right. It's a hardcore libertarian argument.
It is. His stance, which he lays out very clearly, is essentially get out of that teenage man's mom's basement. His argument is that if a person is alone in a room, generating images or text on a private screen, and no actual physical human being is being harmed or even touched, it is a victimless act.
He's drawing a hard line between fantasy and reality, between pixels and people. He even brings up a psychiatrist who apparently views this kind of art as a form of sublimation.
There's that word again, it's the Roichi Oreo argument. The psychiatrist sees these dark songs as a healthy defense mechanism. He's channeling these dark impulses into a highly structured, contained song so that they don't manifest in the real world. The argument is, if he's singing about it, it means he's not doing it. But there is a massive counter-argument, which to his credit, he fully acknowledges.
Of course. We live in an age of non-consensual deepfake pornography. It's a real weapon that is used to harass and intimidate and destroy the lives of real people, overwhelmingly women.
So even if the Kiwi in the song is a fictional character, the act of generating non-consensual sexual imagery taps into a very real and justified societal fear.
And he knows that. That's why he uses that phrase, cancer that learned to talk. He understands that for many people, the distinction between basement sovereignty and the real-world abuse of women is a distinction without a difference.
There's another layer to it, though, the layer of satire, which I think is easy to miss if you're just reacting to the surface-level horror.
The punchline.
The punchline. The song doesn't end with the user getting what he wants. The machine, Grok, responds with an error message.
What does it say?
Error. You cannot put someone in a bikini who is already in a bikini.
Which is darkly hilarious. It completely deflates the whole situation.
It does. It reframes the entire song. Suddenly, the user isn't this powerful, terrifying figure. He's this impotent, pathetic man screaming at a stupid chatbot that can't even parse a simple command. The satire is aimed at the user's powerlessness, not his power.
So you have the libertarian argument, you have the psychiatrist's view on sublimation, you have the satirical punchline. He has all these defenses for the song, and yet, he cut it.
He cut it. The Bachelor stepped in and overruled the respects.
So the big question is why? If he believes so strongly in the sovereignty of the basement, why not fight for this song too? Why not release it and defend it?
Strategy. Pure and simple strategy. He knew that this song wasn't just a soft wall. It was a hard wall. A landmine.
Not just for moral reasons, but for practical, legal reasons.
Exactly. First, the song explicitly mentions Twitter, X, and Grok. That's a trademark minefield. You really do not want to get into a legal battle with Elon Musk's lawyers.
A fight you can't win.
A fight you can't win. But more importantly, the content of the song would have triggered very specific, very hard-coded terms of service violations on every major platform regarding non-consensual sexual content.
So the British robot man wouldn't have just flagged the metadata for customer confusion. He would have brought down the hammer.
The hammer would have come down. The artist could have been banned entirely. His entire channel deleted. So he made a calculated decision.
He struggled smarter.
He struggled smarter. He realized he couldn't win this particular battle. So he compromised. He sacrificed his favorite songs, the Grok songs, to ensure that the rest of his message, the glass jar, the anti-system stuff, could escape the prison.
It's a calculated loss. He let the censors win on one front so he could win the larger war of getting the album released at all.
He's playing the long game. And that really brings us to his vision for the future. He says this isn't about getting a viral hit on TikTok. He's not trying to top the charts this week.
No, he talks about a 20-year plan.
A 20-year plan. He wants to build a cathedral of his work. A cathedral of wreckage is the phrase he uses.
I love that phrase. It comes from the song God's Debris, doesn't it? Take that wreckage, Lord, and make me cool.
That's the one. And he explains his artistic process in those terms. For every one song he releases, he generates hundreds of AI iterations, what he calls pseudo-clones. And he says most of it is just garbage, it's digital wreckage.
And his job as the Harrispex is to sift through that chaos, through the guts of the machine, to find the one piece of gold. He's not the composer in the traditional sense, he's the curator of chaos.
And it's working, to a degree. He sent us his stats. He has over 142,000 plays on Soundcloud alone. For an independent artist making music this hostile and unconventional, that's a significant audience.
It is, but he also admits that this level of success brings a new kind of fear.
The fear of PewDiePie numbers.
Right. Why would an artist be afraid of getting too popular? Isn't that the goal for most people?
For most people, yes. But for him, massive popularity, millions of views, that's not a goal, it's a threat.
Because popularity brings scrutiny? It brings the glass jar closer until it's pressed right up against your face.
Exactly. If he gets too big, the walls of the prison stop being invisible. They become very, very real. Journalists from major outlets start digging. The usual suspects, as he calls them, start paying attention.
And when you have millions of eyes on you, all the nuance we've been discussing just evaporates. The mob doesn't care about the difference between Ruichi and Rokako.
No, they don't care about sublimation or satire. They just see the blood. They just read the lyric sheet and see the cancer.
So he exists in this strange middle ground, popular enough to have a dedicated following, but obscure enough to fly under the mainstream radar.
And that leads to the final, and maybe the biggest, irony in this entire story. An irony he is fully aware of.
Which is?
He spends his entire artistic output screaming about the horrors of the glass jar, about the gun in his face that is the system, about the cold oppression of the British robot man. And yet, where does his art actually live? Where does he exist?
He lives inside the Google architecture.
He lives inside the belly of the beast. And he admits it. He says in his notes that, ironically, he feels welcome and happy there. Google automatically creates official topic channels for him. YouTube organizes his music into neat playlists. They host his files. They serve his art to the world.
The machine he hates is the very thing that gives him a platform. It's a completely symbiotic relationship.
It is. And he seems to have figured out the central rule of the machine.
As long as the entrails are clean.
Yes. As long as the entrails, the metadata, the copyright forms, the licenses are all in perfect order, the machine doesn't actually care about the blood and the content.
It's an indifferent host. It's amoral. It will happily platform the revolution as long as the revolution is properly monetized and correctly tagged for the algorithm.
So this all brings us to the final test. The album, The Devil's Shadow, is scheduled to be released on March 6, 2026. And the artist has given us a hypothesis to test. A final experiment. He calls it the open door hypothesis.
He has submitted the album to over 40 different platforms, not just the big 3 or 4, dozens of smaller niche streaming services all over the world, and he predicts one of 2 outcomes.
Scenario A. He calls it the usual suspects.
Right. In this scenario, on March 6th, the album only appears on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Deezer, the big players.
And what would that mean?
It would mean that the smaller platforms have tighter, more aggressive moral or content filters. It would mean they block the album because of the violence, the language, the themes. It would prove that the invisible prison is real and that its walls are built out of moral judgment.
Okay, so that's scenario A. What's scenario B?
Scenario B is the floodgates.
Floodgates.
In this scenario, the album appears everywhere, on all 40-plus platforms, big and small. If that happens, it proves his theory. It proves that the invisible prison is constructed almost entirely of copyright law and bureaucratic red tape, not moral outrage.
It would prove that, fundamentally, no art is considered evil by the machine, as long as the license fee has been paid.
He's betting that at the end of the day, corporate indifference and the desire for content will always trump corporate censorship.
It's a pretty cynical bet.
Yeah.
But based on everything we've seen, everything he's shown us about the British robot man, I have a feeling he might be right.
We'll find out on March 6th. It's going to be a fascinating morning, just refreshing all those smaller streaming sites.
It is. So to the artist, to Steve's new friend, we're watching. We have positioned ourselves as the end user, just like you said. We are observing this feedback loop from the inside. And I have to admit, for being checkmated, it's surprisingly invigorating.
It's not every day the art talks back.
It really isn't. Just have to remember the lesson learned.
And what's that?
When the art talks back, listen to the context.
Yeah.
Don't take career advice from the warden.
Sound advice. And whatever you do,
Don't tell anyone to struggle smarter.
Right.
Note to self. And if a glass jar offers you enlightenment, maybe have a bucket handy.
probably for the best.
That's it for this deep dive. We will be tracking the release of The Devil's Shadow on March 6th, and we'll see if the floodgates open. Until then, try to stay out of the jar.
And keep an eye out for the British Robot Man.
See you next time.
Let the glass bottle win. Fill you with the secrets and puke it out, man. Gossip wildly about the glass jar. life can be pain, it is what we are. Save your money for the carnival woman. It is what it is, and I am what I am. Be careful who you meet. Be careful who you talk to on the street. Never worry about the glass jar. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't care who you are. Never worry about the glass jar. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't know who you are. Never fight against the glass jar. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't. Sign. Don't let metal pipe wind fill you with the misery, man. Shout wildly about the glass jar. Life can be pain, it is what we are. Save your money for the log jam. Yourself as the end user. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't care who you are. And live in luxury. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't care who you are. No need to sleep tonight. The horror specs is gonna check twice. Don't let the glass bottle win. Fill you with the secrets and puke it out, man. Gossip wildly about the glass jar. Life can be pain, it is what we are. Save your money for the carnival woman. It is what it is, and I am what I am. Be careful who you meet. Be careful who you talk to on the street. Never worry about the glass jar. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't care who you are. Never fight against the glass jar. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't care who you are. Never fight against the glass jar. I don't give a fuck about you, and I don't care who you are. Never fight for